Good morning, everybody. It's 8:30. Time to call the meeting to order of Tuesday, July 1st, 2014 County Board meeting. Our first item is to approve the agenda, and we do have some agenda additions. One is approval to develop a grant-funded roster of position, enhance the services of the Restorations Justice Program. Number two would be approval to replace financial worker who has resigned. And number three will be a flood update from Brian Green.
Move to approve with additions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, we'll move on to citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard today on items not on the agenda? Citizens to be heard. All right. Our next item is employee recognitions. And we have two today. I'll talk loud. Our first one is for Conard. Come on up, Conard. You're going to give a speech after this, right? Yeah, right. Okay, Conard, presented in grateful recognition of 30 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. Conard Eklund, in 2014. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Conard for many years did all the rural roads out in my area, and there was one area where we didn't get a lot of complaints, and that was Conard's work that did that. You did really good work.
Thank you much.
Yeah, now you're in a different district.
And it's a challenge.
Okay, but I'm not hearing any complaints.
That's good.
Thanks, Conard. Congratulations. Kathleen.
It's a different Kathleen.
Yes. You're here for her?
Yeah.
Okay. So presenting grateful recognition of 30 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and citizens, that's Kathleen Henjum. 30 years. You'll have to tell her congratulations for us and thank her for her years of service. And
Thank you.
all right, thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the minutes from June 17th and June 24th.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We do have the bills here. Is there a motion to pay the bills?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. 8:35, we're kind of a minute ahead of schedule here.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and Georgia is going to be picking up the bids because they have till 8:35 to turn them in, and she'll bring them right up at that
She's going to
time.
be at the treasurer's office then?
Yes, she's waiting down there right now.
Okay, do we have, anybody who wants to give a committee report to some of the, Frank, you got a report?
I'll do it. Let's see, Wednesday I went out to motor vehicle department and for inspection there, sort of probably not the final inspection, but it looked like they had a lot of work to be done there yet on Wednesday, but I was out there again yesterday morning, and they got it all done. I mean, they're going to work in the other driver's license thing. I mean, the driver testing. But they're in, they're working, it's operating. Also had an FM COG meeting where, just, I guess, routine stuff there. I went to drug court Wednesday also. Thursday, Family Health Care, the new CEO introduced, well, of course, he was a member there of the staff before, so he gave a report. They also gave a quality improvement or quality patient satisfaction report, and they came out very good on that. So, it was a good report for Family Health.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Okay, it is now 8:35, and I see Georgia has come in here with the bids, right? They're all bids are received. All right, come on up. And this is opening the bids for the elevator upgrade project here in the courthouse facility.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. It appears that we have, the bid sheet before you has 5 that have shown interest in the rebid of the elevators, and we do appear to have 2 bids that were turned in down to the auditor's office.
Yep.
The first one is Thice and Krups that we're opening. And they have a bid bond that has been submitted in the amount of 5%, which was requested. Little drum roll, please.
He's not near as fast as the engineers, you know.
Okay, and the amount of the bid is $375,700. And we have the second bid. And this is from Otis Elevator. Staples. It has staples. This is the bid bond in the amount of 5%. And we have a bid in the amount of $338,516.00.
Okay, those are the only 2 bids, Brian?
Those are the only 2 bids that we received, Mr. Chair.
And the estimate going into this was what?
Right around 3 1/4. If you remember, our first bid was at $375 through the general contractor, so it appears that on the surface, the rebidding has paid off for us in the bid, but what we'd like to do is spend the next, few days, put it on the next agenda for approval.
Okay.
And we'll review the bids and make sure everything has been covered and go from there, if you would.
Very good. All right, so we will not act on awarding the bid.
Does this include the hoist or not the hoist?
This includes the hoist. Yes. This includes the hoist.
All right, so we'll have this on the agenda next week.
Should,
Yes.
you don't want us to approve, and contingent on everything being in order, or?
Well, I guess I'm just thinking that since we did have to cancel all the bids last time, we requested bids,
Okay.
and we asked for a rebid, we'd just like to be
Sure.
careful
Right.
on this and review it, so if we could.
All right, very good. We'll
Thanks.
have that on the agenda next week.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet. Dave, come on up, please. Good morning.
Hey, Dave.
We're a couple minutes early here. You don't have any bid openings or anything, so we're okay to go ahead with you. Your first item is a request to advertise for bids for the 2014 bridge replacement projects.
Yeah, we've got 6 small wooden bridge projects to replace. 4 of them are on the township system and 2 are on county road system. This is consistent with what we do annually, I guess. The only reason we're a little bit later is there is some issue with the funding on the county projects. As far as the bridge bond funding is extremely tight. There's a lot of projects on a waiting list, and we finally got approval to let the 2 598 projects. So we like to package as many as we can to try to get a cheaper price. It's important to us and extremely important to the townships too to try to get a good price on these. So we'd like to advertise on the 7th, the 14th, and the 21st of July, and then open bids August 5th at 9 a.m.
Okay, where are the county bridges?
County Road 66 and County Road 67, right in the area in nature of around Glendon, south of Glendon, that area. Just a couple of small wooden bridges that are on that deficient list that we have, and just kind of knocking them off as they get to a status that they're eligible.
Are they going to be done yet this year?
Yeah, yep, we're looking at, it's kind of tricky because these box culverts take a little while for the producer to make, so we're anticipating if we open them up on August 5th, like Hancock or Cretex could have them available middle of September, give them about 4 to 6 weeks to put them in. You're getting towards the end of October. Hopefully the water's down a little bit. That's what you'd like to do them later in the fall when the water's down, but probably going to put a completion date on them towards maybe even the middle of November. So we will get them in this year. It's just going to be a little bit later than we like to see.
I'm assuming they're gravel roads.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's ditches.
Yep.
Not,
Yep. Correct.
I would move that we request, we advertise for bids,
Second.
as indicated.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. All right, approval of right-of-way acquisition of SAP 14,598.66 and 14,599.67.
I think I might have made a typo.
I think you
that's-
did.
Yep, that's 598 as well.
Okay.
We just need a couple of small slivers of right-of-way just to put the corners of these things in. Mostly it's riprap placement. On March 4th, we did something kind of similar on Highway 52 with a small parcel. We're actually kind of utilizing previous appraisal where we had $12.50 per acre for non-tillable or kind of wetlandy type of land, I guess. And I guess I'd like to kind of do the same thing. We would probably try to utilize something different next year, but I still think the value for some kind of a non-farmable type of a land would be appropriate. And I don't know if Jenny has any comments on that, but it's real similar to what we did this year on County 52.
Yeah, Dave, that sounds appropriate from what we did previously.
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second on the acquisition. Any further comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Dave. You're going to be here for our highway tracking meeting, right?
Yep.
Showing up for it. All right. We'll see you then. Okay, we are kind of early here for this 8:55 item, so maybe we'll go through some of our other committee reports. Grant, do you have anything this morning?
No, I didn't have any last week other than the employee picnic we had, and that,
Do you want
that
to
went
talk
very
briefly
well,
about
so.
our meeting this morning with Juvenile on the budget stuff?
Yeah, we had I guess we did it, this morning we had a meeting with our detention administrator, and talking about our budget situation for next year. And we deal with 9 other counties when it involves our detention center, and I think everything is in order. We're going to have a small increase, but everything is going well in detention. There are some issues we talked about. The clients, the juvenile clients they're getting, are creating some issues for the staff, and things are getting tougher there in that regard. But budget-wise, everything is in order, I think.
I'll add on to that too. It's the we're seeing, because of the programming that we're putting in there, some with the mental health for the kids, and that we're actually seeing some non-member counties coming in and looking at our program, and I know they had budgeted revenues we had budgeted revenues in 2014 of $40-some thousand for that purpose for the whole year, and to date we're at $51,000 already. So there's people recognizing the good things that are going on in the juvenile center in terms of programming for those kids who are having trouble. Hopefully it's a good end result for them. But yeah, so that was, I think, there will be a slight increase in that regard, and it has mostly to do with wages, of course, is always the big player. So that's all you got, Grant?
That's it for me.
All right. John?
Okay, well, you mentioned the community picnic. I thought it went really well, the countywide picnic, and even though we had to move inside, it turned out really nice. I think the spirit of it is really helpful. I think the staff appreciates it, and it's a good annual event for us. I had a transportation meeting transportation issues meeting for social service on the 25th, on Wednesday, and we've been discussing in response to the request and that survey that was done that indicated that transportation remains a major barrier for people getting services in the county. And so we've been meeting trying to figure out how best to solve that problem. Brian was there, and will be maybe has more to add to it, but I thought it was a good constructive meeting, and we did have people from the Met bus service there to hear our concerns, and there's maybe not a lot they can do immediately, but each year when they look at future opportunities to expand service, they will take into consideration our needs and so on. There was a solid waste meeting last Thursday morning, and it was a good meeting. We were able to discuss the burner and the MRF possibilities in the area, and site and so on for a new transfer station. It's kind of an exciting time, I think, for that whole thing. We're looking at being able to find ways to expand the life, or to extend the life of the landfill through using this burner contract, and as well as a lot of other things. So it's an exciting time for it. I think the recycling increase has got real possibilities, and we're looking at trying to find more and more ways to increase recycling in the county. I attended the Futures meeting for AMC Thursday and Friday at AMC headquarters, and that went well. We had a number of presenters that talked to us about different issues. With one of the main thing that was discussed on policy was the effects that the new laws have on joint powers, and I wasn't even aware ahead of time that this is a major concern to many counties. There's and I don't fully understand it, but it sounds like the law has made it to really give advantage to the unions when we have enter into joint powers arrangement, and that they can choose the best of each county's policies somehow, and at least that's the fear. And we might not have a whole lot to say about it. So that's something we need to look at and try to figure out before we enter into any more joint powers. I did attend the big activities down at the MCOM Center on Saturday, the Viking Festival and Scandinavian Festival, which had, oh man, thousands of people. It was really, really packed, and it's a great event for the community. That's it.
All right. We're still a little bit ahead of time here. I had a couple meetings this last week. I already talked about the Personal Issues Committee we had last Tuesday morning. We had a Oakport Joint Powers meeting last Wednesday, and that one was primarily going over requests by the city for establishing zoning requirements, for example, for a probes field for an animal operation that they're looking at having there. And so they had come to the Oakport Joint Powers Board to get our thoughts on what should be there, and ultimately it's going to be a city council decision on it, but we certainly gave some recommendations going forward as to what they should do. It's another area where you could end up having some people concerned about animals near residential areas, and so there has to be that happy medium there, and there was one process that was talked about where they would be granted basically this, they call it different, but the same as a conditional use permit, and so that basically runs with the land, so if you have once somebody gets that and things, if things were to go afoul, it's pretty hard to correct that. And so I had suggested kind of like what we have right now within our county permit process with the feedlots that we have here, is to have inspections, and that conditional use permit would, if I suggested that they if they're going to do it, that they incorporate something like that in there, so that if an inspection is done and they're deemed to be out of compliance, at least then there's this ability to pull the CUP. And so I think that, and that of course, those recommendations then went to the Morehead Planning Commission. The Morehead Planning Commission will hear it, and then from there it'll go on to the council at some point in time.
Another option maybe, and Jenny would know that, would be to have a time-specific end to a conditional use permit for so many years, and then it would automatically be reviewed at that point. So.
Yeah, and we did talk about that, and that could be an option. But the main thing is that for something like that, and we're not talking about massive amounts of animals here. It's basically more for 4-H students to come in and learn how to raise a chicken or something like that, And there is a fairly significant barrier between where they're at and another thing that we suggested is to have no roosters.
That's the joy of farming.
Yeah, but even the Probesfield people themselves agreed that might not be such a bad idea. You have the roosters there, and you're going to have half the people in Crystal Creek calling them.
It's hard to expect little chicks, though.
Well, that's not the idea.
Visitation allowed.
Yeah. And then also again, we had, as John stated, we had our solid waste advisory meeting. There's a lot of really good positive things going on there. Not to mention that we're starting to receive fines from Lakes, what's the name of them? Prairie Lakes, the joint county deal, of which our board has voted to join. And so it won't be long, and we'll get into a joint trade of our solid waste going there for incinerating, and their fines coming here. So will be good for Clay County. And then we continue to have discussions with the city regarding the transfer station, and I know there's discussion being started about a possible MRF. For those who aren't familiar with a MRF, it's a site that's set up that allows for separating the waste into what can be recycled, which then typically they find vendors who will come and they'll buy the recyclable product from us. So that's in the research stage, but all of those, there's one in Boston, Minnesota, that seems to work fairly well. So, all right, now we're on schedule. Brian, we'll wait with your committee reports till the end here. Okay, so we'll move to our 8:55 item, and this is discussion regarding the Agassiz Region Recreational Trail Joint Powers Agreement. So we got Brian and Jenny.
Good morning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning again. What you have before you today is a consideration of a resolution, and Jenny's worked very, very hard with Frank and I on this, but just a little bit of history before I ask Jenny to explain things in detail. If you remember right, this has been a little bit of a frustration for quite a few years. I remember Jerry Waller, when he was on the board, Commissioner Waller would bring back some information, and he didn't know what direction it was going. And then I know when Commissioner Gross got on the Agassiz Recreational Trail, he had expressed some frustration as to what was happening there. And then you had a presentation for a request for $10,000 here a couple months ago, and they talked about some encroachments and some legal issues and some settlements on some bridge work and things along those lines. And then we started looking into the ownership of the trail, who had ownership, who had authority over it, and Commissioner Gross had several meetings with Jenny and myself, and he's taken some pretty clear direction with the Agassiz Recreational Trail Board. In fact, last Monday night, they acted on a resolution to dissolve the Joint Powers Board, and now it goes back to each of the 3 counties for their action. And I think I'm stealing a little bit too much of it, so I probably should turn it over to Jenny, because she's done an awful lot of work, or Commissioner Gross as to what he wants to say about it too, because he's been the lead person on this. So,
Well, no, you're doing a good job in explaining what we did, and stuff, and we just need some more direction as far as enforcement of this trail. And we need to go, the trail itself, the Joint Powers Group just didn't have the enforcement, All we were doing is piling up attorney fees and stuff like that, so. But Jenny can see what we did.
Well, yeah, I'm the detail gal, so you probably all know this trail. At least the Clay County portion of the trail stretches from Ulen to Fertile. Oh shoot, what did I do with my sticky note? Hold on one second. So from Ulen to Fertile, the quitclaim deed, when we examined it, indicates that the 3 counties, Clay, Norman, and Polk, were granted rights in common to the whole. So it's not that we own any stretch of it, we own the whole thing as third partners. So it's not divisible in any way. And then we've learned that from Beltrami to Ada, there's also a stretch. I don't believe Clay County has any ownership in that, but that's still something we're looking into. Of that stretch from Ulen to Fertile, Clay County, there are only 5 miles of that are in Clay County. There's 24 in Norman and 29.5 in Polk. But because we entered into this in joint ownership and through a joint powers agreement, we're all responsible for, upkeep of the whole thing. So the joint powers agreement was established first in February of '93 with the 3 counties. And that was even before the railroad had quitclaim deeded the property to us. But that followed shortly thereafter in '94. We've done an amended joint powers agreement since that in '07. And this whole time, that Joint Powers Board has been operating, and it seems to have been fairly effective. The trail is up and running and in good shape. They kept it mowed and snow groomed and so forth. However, as of late, there's been some issues with property rights, mainly in Norman County. There's adjacent property owners that are contesting the ownership of some of the portions of the trail. And as such, the Joint Powers Board has gotten into a lot of consultation with a private attorney and had a lot of bills as a result of that. And this is not an entity that has any revenue flow or revenue stream. They get some expenses paid by the DNR, so I think they break even, but they don't have any funding stream. And if you recall, Gordy Gunvagen, the trail administrator, has been here a couple times, and he'd requested funds from Clay County. He had also gone to Norman and Polk, but no county has granted any funding ongoing for this. So with all that in mind, Frank had some concerns, and Brian and I got involved, and those concerns were very valid in that the entity was operating at a negative, and it didn't look like there was any good possibilities to come where that could actually change. And like Frank said, the enforcement mechanism of the Joint Powers Agreement is somewhat inadequate. It doesn't really allow the board to do a whole heck of a lot in terms of the things that would need to be done in order to keep the trail running effectively. So we took a look at the bylaws of the entity, and I attached that to the sheet, the summary sheet for your review this morning. The applicable provision about termination is there under number 4, paragraph number 4. And it gives us two options. An individual member or one particular county could pull out with 1 year's notice, or the whole entire thing can be terminated by the 3 counties, and that sets forth how that termination would work if the entire agreement was going to be terminated. It was my advice and Brian's advice also, and I believe Frank shares the same opinion, that really there's no other alternative at this point other than to dissolve the Joint Powers entity and look forward, see what we can do to keep the trail running and not have it bogged down by the Joint Powers Board or the difficulties that the board has found recently. So we started with the termination of the entire agreement by bringing it to the Joint Powers Board, and that was on for discussion 2 separate monthly meetings. And it was the 23rd of June, this last meeting, that there was a motion, a second, and the motion did pass to recommend to the counties individually that they take a look at this arrangement and decide what the counties wish to do. So then the next step was for it to come here. It came to Polk last Tuesday. Polk County passed the termination resolution 5-0. So they've done, they've taken that action. I'm not sure about Norman. I haven't heard if that has been on their agenda yet or not. But effectively, if this board passes this resolution to terminate the Joint Powers Agreement and dissolve the board, we would have 2 out of the 3 counties in support of that. And that's the terms of the Joint Powers Agreement, says there has to be a majority of the owners. So effectively, this board would have the power to do that today. Going forward, I think the anticipation is that the board would continue to operate in winding up activities, making sure all the bills are paid, all the liabilities are taken care of, and provide for a smooth transition. The way the Joint Powers Agreement is written, the ownership of the actual trail would go separately to each county in which that portion of the trail is located. So Clay County would have the 5 miles of trail within Clay County, and we would be solely responsible for that. Upkeep, maintenance, contracts for the
Spraying and mowing.
Yep, spraying, cutting, snow grooming. I think going forward, the anticipation is that with that board still going forward and winding up, we would also have some kind of joint committee of the county representatives to find a way to work collaboratively, even though we are separate ownership of this trail. We would need to work collaboratively to have the trail function as one entire piece. So we've had extensive discussions with the folks from Norman and Polk, and it appears that everyone is in favor of that and getting together and working collaboratively. Some of the DNR grants are contingent on the entire trail being operated. So we wouldn't want one piece of that trail to fall off because we would lose some of that DNR funding. And so everyone has that in the back of their head. And so I guess our recommendation today to this board is to pass the resolution that was submitted to dissolve the joint powers or to terminate the joint powers agreement and dissolve the joint powers board, and then work collaboratively with Polk and Norman to find a way to go forward in the future and operate this trail just outside of the joint powers entity.
Okay. Thank you. Frank?
Just to get this in discussion today, I would make a motion that we approve this resolution as presented.
Second.
Yeah, discussion.
I have some questions. What, our portion of it, are there property rights concerns in any of our portion? I mean, people are disputing the ownership
Not
in
that
Clay
we know
County?
of.
No. not
Okay.
that we know of.
And secondly, does this, if we terminate now, does that, how do we deal with any future bills or remaining bills? Will they come back to us with a specific amount that's needed to?
In that winding up phase that the joint powers board would still be in charge of, I would imagine that there would have to be a reconciling of what is, our debts and our assets, and how we're going to best offset those. Personal property and so forth is to be sold. The real property is to be distributed to the counties. Kind of hanging in the balance, there is a retainage that the Joint Powers Board set aside for a construction project that it did several years ago. And the board deemed that it was not completed, the project was not completed, so that retainage was held. So there is that piece still in limbo. It could cover all the liabilities. It may not. I don't think we know that till we take a better look at the numbers, and we have some discussion about that particular issue and how we're going to handle that. But I would imagine if in the end there was a deficit of any kind, that then we would come back to the boards, and whether it's an equal portion or portion based on the number of miles, we would be asking the boards to pay off those debts, as this was a co-owned project. But I think it's too soon to know if that would need to happen. But I know, Commissioner Everett, you had a concern months back about, we have to be a good player in this, and we have to pay our bills, and we can't just shrug our responsibilities and run away. I don't think that's anybody's plan or motive here, but frankly, I don't think we have enough information at this point to know what those finances look like.
On their information sheet, though, where it says cost impacts, we have to recognize there may be some immediate costs.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, and there's a couple things in the financial aspect that we need to have clarified, and that is, we were visiting with Commissioner Gross this morning just a little bit. If you remember right, and I don't know how many years back it was, there was a loan made from each of the three counties of $15,000 apiece. That is being carried on their books as a liability, and that's why, one of the reasons why they're showing that they're in the red. Plus, they've got some outstanding bills, and we found out last time, I mean, the Joint Powers Board knew it, that there was some subcontractors that were employed to finish up some of the work on a bridge that they haven't been paid for 3 years, and it's a small amount. That needs to be cleared up real soon. And I think there's been some letters written 2 and 3 years ago, and the responses, they haven't gotten responses on it, so they've let them lay there. There needs to be some action. There needs to be some contact, and we can certainly help Commissioner Gross on his committee there to help clean that up. So, yeah, we're not thinking there's going to be any liability. In fact, we did share that with the committee, that one of our commissioners, meaning you, had said, you know, there is an obligation there, and we feel that if there was something left at the end that was an obligation of the counties, that we could come back to the commissioners and the county boards in each county, and if they could see the light at the end of the tunnel, they would be much more readily to react. Now, I know in conversation with Polk County, they do some trail management right now and some park management. They have some on the county system, and their highway engineer is in charge of that. And I have visited with our engineer, who I think Dave is still here in the room, because we would consult them on spraying and weeds and things like that to get us over this hump. We feel that there will be a snowmobile club or something that will step up to manage this, and we can do it through a committee basis. That's our feeling. So I think it's on a good path.
So I have a couple of questions as well. Are there any outstanding lawsuits out there between the landowners and the Joint Powers Group? Because I remember in that presentation to us, there were these legal fights that were going on. Do we know of any lawsuits that have actually been filed in regards to this, where there could be an issue going forward?
We don't know of anything that's been filed. I think clearly there are disputes,
Okay.
but they've never, I think they've consulted the attorney for title opinions and those kind of things, but nothing has ever been filed to my knowledge.
So by dissolving the joint powers and then each county taking their own miles, the areas where there were contention between the trails and the landowner would become that county's issue.
Correct.
Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think-
and we knew of none in Clay County on our portions.
Right, we haven't had any.
And then my other question on this is, we're talking about dissolving this Joint Powers Board, and of course this deals with trails that's used by the public. And what is the public's knowledge of this and the trail? Some of these clubs that go out and use these things. What do they know about this? What input have they had into this? I'm assuming, based on what you've told us this morning, the goal is to still keep the trails functioning. It's just that it's going to require a new method of management, and it sounds like each county is going to be responsible for managing their own miles of the trails.
They normally have representatives at the meetings.
They have been, so they've been at these meetings, the
Yeah, they're
groups?
aware of it.
Okay, yeah, because I'd hate to have it get in the paper and all of a sudden these trail groups are wondering, okay, well, we didn't know anything about this and we didn't have an opportunity to be heard on this, and that would concern me, so. But if they've been there, then that's good. Great.
So we jointly own that trail, but simply by terminating the joint powers agreement, that divides it into
Yeah,
our equal our sections that are in our county.
right.
We won't have any ownership then. There won't be any legal issues about that. We still actually own some of that trail in.
There shouldn't be, because the terms of the joint powers agreement provide that upon dissolution, that it will go to the respective counties. Now, that would have to be accomplished, I would assume, by a quitclaim deed, and we would do that and quitclaim deed it to each county individually. I don't anticipate an issue there. So then we would be the full owner of the 5-mile stretch in Clay County. Initially that was quitclaimed from BNSF to the counties, so there could be property disputes, that we don't know about, but we haven't had any in Clay County as of yet, so.
I guess I think the way it sounds, and even based on the last presentation we had here, it probably sounds like the best thing to do at this point in time, but I would, moving forward, Jenny, you talked about getting still getting a group from each together to coordinate so that hopefully you can just keep this run going for everybody to use, right? And
Yeah, we still have to do that.
Yeah, that's still our goal, and then I would I would hope that, I'm trying to think, is it the Clay County Trailblazers group? Are they one of the ones that?
They're one of them, yeah.
Yeah, one of the, those types of people that they can be involved too and be helpful in suggesting how these trails can be run, and of course they got to be financed somehow, right? So,
Well, I think we'd have to operate this thing just like as Brian had said before, just like a county road, When the county road goes from one county to the next, our responsibility stops at the county line.
Right.
That's pretty much how this is going to be operated too. So,
okay, John.
One of the issues, I talked to some property owners from Norman County who have, a grievance here on this thing, and they claim that their deed, shows that the property is the railroad's as long as the railroad exists, or as long, and that so their interpretation is that after the railroad stopped, then the land should have gone back to them.
Okay.
And of course, our agreement here says differently. So that's the kind of situation there's going to be in, but at this point, it sounds like it's only been in Norman County where they've had these kind of concerns. So,
Right.
but that could come up in ours as well, I presume, if somebody checks their.
It could, if that was the contingency on that piece of land, I think it would be universal, but through the whole stretch of trail. But I have not seen all the property documents as related. I only have the quitclaim deed from the railroad to the counties, and I think a lot of what you're referring to was explored by the attorney that the JPA had hired. But that's been many years ago, and really we're no farther today in reconciling those things than we were 5 years ago. And that just seems to be kind of the theme of this entity, is that there's just not enough there to really get things done, and so it kind of lingers and nothing gets resolved. So these issues about property rights are not resolved. The issues about the subcontractor that wasn't paid years ago is not resolved. And they have monthly meetings, and they're just, it seems to be spinning wheels, and I think individual counties could get those things accomplished so much easier.
Okay. All right, any other comments? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried, and the motion is to dissolve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I want to thank Jenny and Brian for your assistance in this. That really helped the board out up there. I think our county showed some interest in getting something done up there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a few of our agenda items here, and you should go very quickly here. Michelle here? For the restore, yeah, there we go. Good morning. So you're looking for a approval for a development grant?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a grant available through the Office of Justice Programs. We do have other grants through that same program funding source. It comes through the Minnesota Restorative Services Coalition actually contacted us. They're based out of Minneapolis, and they were interested in helping us develop and enhance our restorative justice program. They do a lot of work with looking at programs and enhancing their best practices and data collection. So it would be an opportunity for us to kind of even move forward with the work that we're already doing with restorative justice and kind of develop our program even more. And our focus for probably about the last year has been getting into the schools and doing that diversion even before we're getting the contact from law enforcement. And so this would give us an opportunity to have a part-time facilitator who could take the load of some of our conferences that are already happening and give our current coordinator an opportunity to start developing those programs and that partnership within the school system. So the funding that we're looking for it's kind of in three parts. We're looking for this grant to help provide us a part-time or a roster position, 10 to 20 hours per week as needed to do some of our conferences that we're already scheduling and doing kind of outside of the normal work hours. The funding would also provide for this Minnesota Restorative Service Coalition to do technical assistance for our program, as well as an evaluation system and to develop that for us. So it would be in twofold. The total grant submission that we are looking for is $60,000, with our county getting about a third of that for that part-time position, and then 2/3 going to MRSC, or the Minnesota Restorative Services Coalition, to provide some of that outreach and services to our program for the development. So
And
it's a-
so, Michelle, all this stuff would be just to enhance the restorative justice program that we
yeah,
have,
up here,
right?
correct. Yep.
Of which this board has given full support to.
Yes, that's absolutely. Thank
It's,
you.
I think, and Grant being in law enforcement, I think that's shown to be one that's been well worth
Good.
the investment to
Good.
do, so. Grant, do you have any comments on?
No, I agree with what you said, and I think this is a great possibility here again, to get it funded again, so yeah, I'll move to approve the request.
Okay.
Second.
How long is this funding for then? Just 1 year?
It's a 1 year, yep, it would be October 1st of this year through September 30th of 2015. So some of the funding, it would really be for that enhancement that would be done within a year, and I don't know that we would need to continue that funding source or that connection with MRSC on that development level. I would imagine we'll still be working with them and collaborating with them. And then the roster position, we have been talking a little bit about looking at having a fee for restorative justice, and that's something that this program may help us with. And so we may be able to sustain a roster position if we start providing a fee for the restorative justice services, so to help sustain that possibly in the future.
Yeah,
So that
I
is
was going to say, as Frank asked the question, we're looking at a 1-year grant deal here, and then once that's over,
Right.
it's kind of there's kind of a no guarantee, so to
Yes.
speak, that we can continue it here.
Right.
But certainly, if there's a method out there that revenue can be raised to do it, and it's kind of a user pay deal, that's a pretty good solution.
Yeah, and they also look, right now, MRSC does some volunteer-based facilitation, so we're actually volunteers would be conducting the conferences. So I think them helping us develop maybe what would be our best practices here, and whether that is providing some sort of fee for the services, because really for diversion, some of the youth are not then having to pay other fines or fees through the court system. So I think, and that would be the reason we're looking at more of the roster position instead of looking at really filling a part-time position, more specific position.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. There's a motion on the table. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
All right. Thank you very
Good to
much.
go. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Okay, Rhonda. You're looking for approval to replace a financial worker who has resigned. What's going on in your department? There's resignations coming in.
Must be the tough boss.
Is it the tough boss or what?
Well, this gal, I received this resignation yesterday, so thank you for allowing me to get on the agenda today. This is another financial worker. This one has been here about 10 months, and she's moving to the cities, and is actually going to be working as a financial worker in Dakota County. So we're losing her and just got her through all the training, so here we go again. So we're just in the
Can
process.
we build Dakota County for the training?
That would be nice. We try to do our share of stealing from other counties as well, but, so I am seeking approval to replace this position as well. We're right in the middle of, if you recall, A few weeks ago, I was here to replace another financial worker, and we do have an office support specialist who's going to be moving into that position, so we'll be backfilling that office support specialist and then filling this one as well, if you approve.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. There you go, Rhonda.
Okay, thank you. I should have said I did have one correction in the cost impact. The current person is on step 2, not step 3. I had that
Oh, okay.
wrong after looking at that, but,
All right.
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Brian? Good morning. You're going to give us a flood update
Quick one, hopefully.
on July 1st.
I just wanted to give some background, and you probably already know all this information, but the governor declared a state of emergency for 35 counties in Minnesota back on starting on June 11th. We are not part of that. Our closest county is Otter Tail County. They're part of it. There is probably going to be, I'm sure there will be, a federal disaster, but that'll be a couple weeks down the road. They have not asked for it yet. The FEMA teams come into the state of Minnesota on Monday, and they're doing their assessment, and I'm sure there will be a federal disaster. I've been trying to keep track of everybody and let know what's going on. Again, we have to meet our threshold, and our current threshold is 200,000. Let me give you an exact amount there. It's 206,000, and it goes by per capita. So that means we have to have either spent that amount of money or had that amount of damage, and we're not really even close to that yet. Some townships has had some damage, and also the counties had a little bit of damage on some roads. This is County Road 86, if you want to take a look at that. It's starting to happen. Hopefully the rain will quit and we won't have any more damages. So the other thing I'd like to mention is that with the state EOC, they are full activation, full go down to southern Minnesota, northwest Minnesota, and the Twin City area. It's been getting hit pretty hard.
So is that, Brian, is that, we kind of see on the news kind of like what people saw of us when we were going through our flood fights, and are they in are they as a severe of a case going on down there as what we in the Red River Valley had here in 97 and 09?
Yeah, basically it's going to be historical flooding for a lot of that Mississippi and Minnesota River.
So my question to you then is this, back during both of those floods, we received a lot of assistance from agencies in the eastern part of the state that came here and helped us. Have we offered anything in terms of assistance to them?
We have to the northwest part, Lake of the Woods in Roseville County.
Okay.
Of course, we're constantly in contact with that northwest region, which is part of what I am. They have not reached out to my department or anybody else in the county that I know of,
Okay.
Requesting any assistance as of yet.
So possibly because I know the Roseau area, they were,
Yep.
or was it Ware Road was
Yep.
really in jeopardy of?
Yep, Roseville County.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay. But I would hope that that we would offer our assistance. We were certainly grateful to dozens and dozens of counties who came here and helped us, and
Yep.
it's probably our turn to return the favor if they need it. So.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking too, I remember, for instance, Hennepin County coming with the kind of
Yeah.
equipment they did, and if they're in trouble, we, at least should offer it. It's not like they're gonna need our help.
Yeah, no. I've got a lot of requests, but it's mainly on procedures, how we did things and, stuff like that. We've done it before. Everybody's looking like, how do we do it? And so, well, a little late now. We should have had that planned out before. But, so we give them that assistance in a way. And we do have our resources with it. The state of Minnesota knows what we have here.
Sure.
For sandbags and equipment and all that stuff too. I also got to mention, last weekend, Old Port Township had a lot of sewer backup.
Yeah,
We used our code red system to notify them, I believe it was 4 times or 5 times, and I'll let them know what was going on. There's been some good feedback and there's been some bad feedback on that whole thing. So we don't know exactly how it happened or what happened, but I think they've been working on it. So.
It's a more public service issue, right?
Correct.
It's
It
not.
is.
It wasn't related to river flooding that they know.
No, but it could be. I don't know yet until they, I guess, get it dug up and find out exactly what happened. Maybe it could be related to overland flooding, so.
I thought Morton Public Service only worked with the water, that the sewer
No.
was the city.
No, well, both.
Water and sewer,
Yeah,
yeah.
they do both.
It's, well, it'd be the water department for the city of Moret,
Yeah,
not
waste.
public service.
Yeah, wastewater, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
John, you were correct.
yeah.
Dave has been, we've been in contact daily about, if we have more damage in the townships, you have to let me know if we start getting damage, and also the city of Moret. So we'll keep compiling it. We go back to that June 11th. Anything starting on that date, they'll try to keep track, and if we meet that threshold,
Well, how could we do that if we're not one of the 32 counties?
we would just
Ask
ask
for the
for
item?
it, yeah. We probably would not have to declare a state of emergency. We would just roll our numbers into that, so. Also, you guys are probably well aware, the state of Minnesota passed legislation last year to have kind of a fund for emergencies. It's a little bit different. Basically, it's really not clear how they're going to do that yet, but part of that fund pays for that 25% that the state or local would have to pick up. So that'll cover that. But then there's also money available there if we don't declare a disaster. So if we say we meet, I think it's 50% of our threshold, we meet 100,000. And then from then on, the state would be able to help us all pay for the rest until we get up to that 200,000 mark. But it's not clear how they're going to do that yet, so.
Okay, good.
That's about it. Brian, do you have anything?
No, I think you kind of covered it. Because yesterday you were talking about that threshold and how that offset would be. So I thought that was an interesting factor.
Thanks for your work, Ryan.
Thank you.
Good job, thanks. All right, last thing I think we have here is a report from our administrator on his week's activities.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, I had a comment there, but I guess I'll leave it alone. He's got one instead.
Save it.
Well, I think the first thing that I want to mention is on behalf of the county employees, the county picnic that was held. You guys chipped in and helped out, and you endorsed that, and I think it really goes a long way for county morale and employee morale. I know it was a lot of smiles and a lot of appreciation shown during that. So I just want to emphasize that thank you to you commissioners for helping out and for supporting that function. I think it's really a good idea. It was mentioned that the DMV building is now moved over, and I can't say enough to the IT staff and GIS staff and the maintenance staff just really pitched in. I mean, when you have to be open for business till 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then you got contractors on top of it, and then you got to turn around and be ready for business Monday morning. You folks that have been in business or are in business know how that is a little tricky to coordinate, and I can't say it didn't come off without any hitches, but I think everybody deserves a real round of appreciation for that. I was out there yesterday, and I bet there was 35 people in the lobby. It's just unbelievable. And of course, I guess I realized that, or somebody mentioned it was the last day of the month, and people wait for their renewals until the last day of the month. And we're going to continually try to improve that to make sure, with all the workstations that we have now, if we can work with Cheryl and maybe staffing it a little differently at the last day of the month, because it's still get quite a backlog there. But the flow is really going to improve. We have some things left to do. They were doing catch-up painting yesterday out there because now the testing, the driver's testing, needs to be ready to go by tomorrow. And, of course, we used that and abused it for 2 months and had lots of people through there. So it's, and we got to do some work around the outside and talk to people about that a little bit. So it's going really well. Done some budget work this last week, working with Georgia and Joe were in to talk about it this morning. That was mainly what we met with Steve over in the juvenile center with, and I think things are moving along quite well on that. We'll have some preliminary figures here pretty soon for you. attended that construction meeting. We've already talked about that a great deal. The Social Service Transportation Committee, as Commissioner Everett talked about, I think we made some progress, but it was a year ago that we met. And frankly, we had a discussion at that meeting that we kind of got to kind of put our discussions into actions now. We've got to kind of decide what the need is, and that's what they're going to work on. I mean, it's easy to say that there is an incident where a mother or dad with 3 children, and they're going to an appointment, and it takes them an hour and a half to get there, and the anxiety level really increases when they have to wait at this bus stop, and they're going to a mental health or counseling session, and you've got children with behavioral problems. That's really a challenge, and that's what we talked about at that meeting. But we have to know the scope of it before I think we can react to it. And I guess I know what Commissioner Everett and myself talked about is representing you on that, and that, you know, there is only so much money to go around sometimes, and we have to prioritize. Maybe there is funds to help that out, but maybe it has to come from something else, a program that has outlived its usefulness. So we centered around that discussion quite a bit, and I think we made some pretty good progress, and are going to tie down some numbers and be ready to bring something forward in the next few months. I'm hopeful. We had a conference call and diversion, and it's kind of a pre-planning thing as to what the steps you've heard on the news, what's going forward with the planning and the actual development down in the Oxbow areas, Hicks and Baki. They started with the levee down there. And just a comment, Commissioner Everett, on the business of the joint powers employees. That was pretty heavy discussion last legislative session, and they really did some negotiating to get it even down to where it's at right now. And I do believe it's for newly established joint powers groups, that the employees that are coming from a county going into this group, that they, and what the unions were concerned with is that they were treated fairly coming in. And for example, I'll use the joint power entity that we've established with the other 4 counties in public health. We retain the employees, but if we were to lump those all together into a joint powers, then you have to look at what benefits and what things come along with them. And I think that was kind of the whole issue of it. But yeah, they were pretty successful in getting some pretty good legislation from the employees'
Some of the counties
standpoint.
were concerned about, for instance, if one county has a really good vacation policy, another county has a really good or pay scale is higher, and if they all 4 counties and they all have something that's really good,
They can cherry pick the best.
Could choose the best of all 4 of them and demand that that's what they get. And that was the concern some of the counties had. But we're not going to be transferring our staff.
No, we're not. I was just using that as an example. And I think that was kind of the fear amongst the employees out there. That's why they went to the legislators and sought some protection for that, I think was the idea. And I was out of the office for a couple days, I guess, and I appreciate your support on that, folks, and allowing me to do that, or any of us county employees to do that. That's very nice of you. So with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Yeah, I want to comment on the TMB. Yesterday, I already received a few emails regarding how nice they felt that was. So I know we have a highway tracking committee meeting here this morning, and I'm gonna go over there and take a peek at seeing an operation now. The last time I was there was the same day Frank was, and we were concerned about, geez, can they get all this stuff done in those final hours? But they managed to get it done.
Yes, they did.
So it looked very nice. So I'm anxious to go see it in operation today. So.
Yeah, I was going to comment further on that too. You know, it's amazing how the different, like Lori and Georgia and Joe and Tim Dent and all those guys had to get together. I mean, and use their services that Friday night and Saturday to get that thing going. You know, because when I was out there Wednesday, I pretty much had the impression we're not going to do this. You know, but those guys came through.
We have little faith.
They did a great job, and I got to compliment them. And I was going to talk also on the picnic too. You know, I was very impressed with what we did there. But does the county, do we do a family type picnic at all? Is it just an employee picnic that we do? Okay, just you know, I just thought it was just a great gathering, and of people coming forward. I was surprised how many people show up for that, and that's good. And,
okay. All right. Very good. That's covered it. Vicki, have anything today? We're good?
I'm
All right.
good, thanks.
All right, we're adjourned.